Rock My World. That's Michael Jackson there. And it's, 17 minutes to 10. It's the breakfast show. It's Juju, it's Toby Kell-Ogg, and it's me, Bonsu. And we are very pleased to say we've got Paul Atherton here with us in the studio. He's a documentary and film producer and director, and he's got a new film out. It's a 10-minute short called Colorblind. And it kind of links in with some of the things we've been discussing today. The readiness of Britain for a black prime minister. And of course, there was a study done by both Harvard University and Manchester University saying that the British people are ready, okay, much as the Americans were ready to elect a black president, but it's a political process that isn't. So it's kind of good to be talking about this now. Paul, what is Colourblind about, if I need to ask you? I'm guessing, go on.
Well, to put simply, Colourblind is about how we all see colour. Mm-hmm. And the film is basically a short which introduces two characters. Dan, who's a black guy who lives in a white British society and understands he needs white people around him to be successful. And John, who's a white liberal that would have any black friends if he'd ever met any. And they meet through a mutual friend who doesn't turn up in a pub, and they just have what we'd call just a normal conversation. However, during that conversation, we see everything through John's eyes, the white guy's eyes. And the more Dan relates to his world, the lighter his colour gets until it eventually disappears. But when he makes references to anything that's black, so he talks about going out in Brixton, he becomes very dark in John's eye.
Okay. And what is the message? What's the underlying message? Well, it's pretty obvious to me, I think. But what were you trying to say?
Well, there's a couple of things, but the most important thing, I think, is that, a lot of people talk about race and racism and skin colour and this kind of thing without actually realising how people engage with it. Mm-hmm. And the underpinning message of the film is that the fact that white people, as a generality, will often forget colour if they've got cultural references in kind with people, in exactly the same way as if you're talking to somebody that is Jewish or German or anything. Yeah. If you find cultural references that you can both engage with,
music or film, for example,
anything at all, the rest of it will disappear. And I think one of the best analogies for that is if you've ever dated somebody and fallen in love with somebody, you don't see them as they are, you see them through your own eyes. Yeah. And they change, and it's only when the relationship ends you suddenly look at them and they look completely different to how you've always envisioned them whilst you were in that relationship. And the message of the film is just that people are looking at each other, not in terms of black and white or anything, but just simply in terms of how they engage with each other.
And I noticed, I haven't seen the film yet, sadly. I'm definitely going to watch it tonight. But you've got Will Johnson on board.
We did. Will volunteered his time and his skills, and we were very grateful for that. And as did his colleague Robert Kavanagh. And they first worked together on Cracker 14 years ago. And they wanted to work together again. So we persuaded Robert to blackface. So that was quite fun on the day.
Okay. It's out of vogue these days, of course.
Well, that was the irony. We started off, we were going to do blackface, but then when the gollywog remark came up with Thatcher, we thought, well, we'll go for a gollywog look. And then a week later, the Al Johnson production pulled blackface because they were scared, scary of offence. And we were kind of going, well, that's exactly the point of this film. People shouldn't be afraid to offend. Yeah. They should be, they shouldn't be racist, they shouldn't go out proactively, but they shouldn't be afraid to offend. If we get into a society where we're always kind of going, we can't say that because we may offend somebody, it's just going to be a ridiculous state of play.
Is one of the underlying messages that, how can I put this, black people see race not around every corner, but a lot more vividly, overtly, and often than white people do. They assume white people are trying to make racial kind of undertones and digs when actually sometimes they're not. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly what we're saying. But I think it goes further than that. I think that we're saying that, the white middle classes have created a problem that the black communities have taken on board as their own now. Where, just the mention of a word gollywog doesn't have to have a context, doesn't have to have a racial context in any sort of type, but will immediately be responded to.
But you say this, and I just had a brief look at your film, which I, by the way, think is brilliant. But people do say things that are tremendously offensive. Now, I'm going to do a story on my Saturday show, the Saturday Salmagundi with Toby Kell-Ogg and the Oggettes on Saturday at 7:30 to 10, about this particular thing, which is about a rag mag that's just come out, the Barts and London rag mag, in which somebody sent me a thing. The most offensive jokes are in here. A lot of deeply anti-Semitic jokes in here.
Right.
And I'm going to follow it up for Saturday's show. So people can say things that are deeply offensive. And, inevitably, if you're black, you're going to see the world through the prism of your own experience. I just don't... Why
are you saying,
you?
Paul, there's a hypersensitivity, you think?
Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
that what you're thinking?
Unquestionably. I think, again, you have to remember this was drawn from my experiences.
Yeah.
So when I was a child growing up, I got all the name calling. As you know, I grew up in a small Welsh village which was entirely white, and I was the only black kid there, and therefore everybody reacted kind of badly. Usually, mainly the parents.
The only black in the village.
Yeah, exactly. And so my experience was always that as I was growing up, the terms people used didn't really matter. I mean, I think Reginald D. Hunter has it best.
Oh, the comedian.
Yeah, the comes from the deep south in America, and he really understands racism. And he kind of comes over here and you go, black people have got these very soft epithets, racial epithets, and it's true. And I didn't care less if they called me gollywog or coon, it didn't make any difference. It was how it was being said and what was being spat at me.